Fund.
Good afternoon. We don't have much time, so we will start immediately. Eylon, yesterday you came back from a journey, a very significant journey of Hasbara in New York. We've all seen the very hard work you've been doing, and I'm interested in asking you. This is the most just war in the history of Israel, and it seems as if the foreign media and the media around the world, social media as well, make it very difficult for us because it's a war of narratives. And I'd like to hear from you, first of all, whether we lost, whether are we even capable of changing something or minimizing the great gap of narratives between the narratives? First of all, when it comes to foreign media, is not that good. It's not all about October 7th, but what they're interested in is in the war in Gaza and the different footage and documentations from Gaza, and we have difficulty in explaining to everyone that, of course, we do not underestimate human suffering in Gaza, but there is an address. The terrorists actually declared war and they try to hide behind the citizens. In terms of Hasbara, we don't think that during the war we'll be able to convince the entire world to become Zionists, but definitely we want to say that we do not apologize and we demand respect of others. We think that it actually is very necessary. But in fact, we are trying to maintain the support of our allies. We know that it's difficult, but you have to be loyal to what you knew on October 7th, that this war must end with the elimination of Hamas. Otherwise, they will come back, and next time it will be worse. What's so difficult in this battle of narrative is the lack of balance. For example, if I'm on air, I defend the Israeli side, but I against me there's not only Hamas and PA, there are other entities from the UN that chose a side and try to use their power to enforce the end of the war, and a whole orchestra of human rights organizations that chose to side with the other sides, and they try to enforce an end to a war when Hamas is still powerful in Gaza, and we do not accept it. So what's difficult here is that sometimes I manage actually, I'm quoted on the New York Times, but still there is a difficulty to change their overall narrative. It's me against 10 other people who claim that I'm a liar. So all the time I keep on repeating, we do provide humanitarian aids, yes. So since you were chosen for this official position, so after the war broke, you are saying that we weren't prepared. And now what I'd like to ask you, as a mother of 4 children who also, some of them also live in the US, do you think that our narrative in the media, who are we addressing? The younger generations, the decision makers? Who are we addressing? If we are so undernumbered, as you mentioned earlier, how can we even build this narrative so that we're able to reach the young generation who will become the next leaders of the world? So first of all, it's a fact that if I joined 1 week after the war, we weren't prepared. But despite that, we do want to work hard and to do whatever it takes to make it happen. So we actually can do, we have, and the Minister of Shikli supports the podcast. I just established a new format, and it shows that there is willingness to support Hasbara efforts. So we try to redefine the role of a governmental spokesperson. I'm not just sitting there waiting for CNN to call me. No, we're breaking all the rules, and we do 3 things that haven't been done before and redefine the role of spokesperson. There is every day there is a press conference from Kiryat with the Prime Minister office logo, and at the end there are questions from BBC, Sky News, etc. Sometimes it's broadcasted live. When the hostages were released, they said on BBC we're going to have a press conference live. And the second thing is that we invest a lot in producing special content to reach social media, realizing that young generation consume content through their smartphones. So we will do it on their platforms. And the third thing is the podcast. I think I'm the first spokesperson who have an official podcast, State of a Nation. That's its name. What do I know? How do I decide what to say? I discussed with different issues with experts, and it's an opportunity for me to ask them questions. And this is how we provide tools to our supporters overseas so that they will be able actually to support us themselves. So we are trying to be as creative as possible. We have the support of the minister and the Hasbara unit, but of course it's like David against Goliath. We are 15 million Jews, not all of us are here, against 2 million, all these Muslims. So, Pnina, we heard about the multiple challenges of Hasbara, and there are many of them. And another difficult campaign, which has to do with our ability to struggle, is the justice. It has to do with the legal campaign. And we saw that South Africa sued Israel in The Hague, and this is the first time that Israel became active at the legal level. So where do we stand there? Have we seen the worst? Or maybe in this legal arena, we have the ability at least to become victorious, or to manage to apply our narratives. So, first of all, it's not correct to say that only after South Africa sued us, we started to become active. Now there are legal experts in the IDF, in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They've been working for many, many years. This is an ongoing campaign. And in this campaign, we do not have the upper hand. It has been like that for many years. It's a political campaign. It's a campaign where the other party is stronger, and it's been going on for many years. It has been developed for many years. It's a campaign that has a purpose, and their purpose of those who are behind it is destruction of the state of Israel. That's part of the concept. So there is a military campaign against us, and there is the concept that they want to destroy the legal legitimacy of Israel. And this is what stands behind this campaign. It has been developing for years through the campuses, through the media, through the UN, and of course everything that has to do with human rights. The human rights agencies are controlled by anti-Israeli factors. Some of them are anti-Semitic and are very critical of Israel. And all these factors, including the media, this is a whole campaign. Now, the legal element is central here, because Israel is not only presented as a country which is not nice, but as a country that infringes the law systematically. And there are two main themes here, or two types of discussions. The first talks about Israel as infringing Palestinian rights, their the right of self-determination, and they claim that we've been doing that for a long time because we don't allow them to implement their right of self-declaration, and they speak about preventing them from the right to basic rights, and some of it is indeed based on reality, let's be fair. And alongside it, whenever there is a war operation, we are perceived as an entity that infringes um, war laws. And this war is very long. We don't know the exact number of casualties amongst the Palestinians, but there's no doubt that there are many casualties on the other side, lots of destruction, many displaced people, and there is a severe humanitarian crisis there. It's all related to complaints about infringing um, the law, and they even actually talk about genocide. That's the most severe crime of all, as you know. And once this proceeding started, although the Israeli team actually did a great job there, but the connection between Israel and genocide now is very common. So if you've seen demonstrations abroad, they always, people there actually recite the slogan of Stop Israel Genocide. And let me say a few words about it. This morning you talked about conception and whether we should have, how come nobody warned about what was about to happen with Hamas. So I'd like to warn us, if we do not wake up and if we don't think about it and do something about it, we are on the way to a point where Israel will be totally isolated in a few years. And this is the direction we are headed at, and we better understand that, because it has multiple implications. Everything depends on the part that we're not an isolated country, and I'm really concerned about that. So let me just add to the question I asked you before. If Israel is more proactive in the legal arena, so don't you think we will do more than just react when we are being attacked and when they sue us at different places? Well, there is a move of denial now, a trend of denying what Hamas did, and it's a horrible thing. It's like denial of the Holocaust, and here it's very important that we are proactive. There was a report that was issued recently about gender-based crime, but it's not going to solve the problem, okay? Even if we manage to convince the world that the enemy is horrible, it doesn't mean that they will actually ignore human rights. And in the first place, Israel is perceived as an imperialist state. So this is the direction. It's not only crimes of war, but genocide. And the most important thing is it's not just extreme voices, anti-Israeli, anti-Semitic voices amongst the Arab Muslim community. It actually penetrates other arena, and need to block it. And we need to be offensive, but not just to show how horrible the enemy is, but just to show them that we are doing the right thing. So we have so many challenges and Ruth. At the same time, we want to speak about. I'd like to speak about the experience of anti-Semitism, growing anti-Semitism around the world. It's growing very significantly. So the League reports, ADL League reports a leap of 600%. So I'm asking you to explain. Today, new anti-Semitism is anti-Zionism. So can you explain a little bit more about it? Anti-Semitism in the Arab world and the Western world, politicization and academization of taking all these narratives and actually to reorganize them. Tell us a little bit about how the world and how anti-Semitism is reflected in the challenge we're facing here in Israel. Yes. So thank you first of all, and I'd like to say a few words before I answer your question. I want to go back to what Eylon said, and I agree with what Pnina said, but I'd like to say also that in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we totally take part in the Hasbara efforts. We have 108 agencies around the world. Our diplomats are deeply involved in the struggle for the image of Israel and maintaining legitimacy of Israel, and definitely definitely ever since war started, we want to maintain legitimacy to fight back and to obtain more legitimacy to act in Gaza. And with regards to anti-Semitism, let me go back one step back and say that there is a phenomenon that has been growing in the past 2 decades, two parallel trends. First is negative and the other is positive. We've seen the negative one as a tsunami. It's just a tsunami explosion of a wave of anti-Semitism. It's totally insane. We see it on TikTok. We see it in videos. We see it all over the media. And the positive trend is that along the years, along the two last decades, we've seen increased awareness, at least amongst certain parts of society, especially at the level of leaders, that they realize what anti-Semitism is and that it's important to struggle against it and that they need to make sure that the state does something about it. And I'm not speaking about the state of Israel. I think that we Israelis, an average Israeli, doesn't really understand what anti-Semitism is and sees anti-Semitism as, I don't know, we're being, misjudged at the Eurovision Song Contest or football matches. No, anti-Semitism makes Jews miserable around the world. It makes their life miserable, and ever since October 17, it's more intense. And the state of Israel has this basic commitment, and this is what the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is trying to do. We are very much committed, fundamentally committed to be there to support individuals and communities, Jewish community, to struggle with this phenomenon. That's one of the trends. And the second trend, which is negative and which has happened at the same time, every year we measure the level of anti-Semitism and we see that it gets worse and worse. And we also see it in areas which we haven't seen it before. We see it in Australia, for example, ever since October 7th. Australia had some level of anti-Zionism, anti-Semitism, but it wasn't that alerting. It wasn't such a great concern. It's not as we used to think about France and Britain, but ever since October 7th, it's completely unpleasant to be Jewish in Australia. You're just your target for physical attack. And we see a reduction in the age where people first encounter anti-Semitism. Actually, pupils at schools, elementary school, they are being beaten up and bullied by their peer mates, and they are being blamed for killing children in Gaza. But let me just actually give you the figures. 1 of each 5 Jews experiences anti-Semitism nowadays. It's amazing. Yeah, and about 60% of the Jews in the diaspora try to conceal their Judaism. It's a lot of people, and the fact that you cannot wear a Star of David or a kippah on your head is very significant. Last week, a Jew went on a train in London and was abused, and he had to actually get off the train. He was not beaten up, luckily, but in other places on that weekend, people were beaten up, and there was a murder in the U.S., and 2 Jews were physically attacked, and one in Zurich and the other one in Paris. So we do see this, and we eventually we understand that it's a process that actually reached a peak on October 7th, and one of the most horrible places where we saw it, and here we can speak about academization, it's the campuses, and mainly in the US, but not only, also in Britain and France. And we hear reports about Jewish students who cannot go to their classrooms, enter the classrooms. One of the most absurd stories after October 7th, I think the world has turned the page, not only October, on the 8th of October. They just turned the page. We are still processing the trauma, but the world has turned the page. Even before we went into Gaza, even before the pictures that Eylon is speaking about, but it was all actually targeted towards Jews, and especially at the campuses. Thank you. I'd like for a moment to go back to Eylon. I just want to say a word about the Arab world. So there is anti-Semitism in the Muslim world, Arab world. It affects directly Muslim communities in the Western world, and wherever there are Muslim communities, we see it more intensely, and we see actually the interest of Islamistic anti-Semite groups of anti-Israeli. By the way, anti-Israeliness and anti-Semitism is more of the same, and we see that they have shared interests with liberal left-wingers and group of LGBT. We see such demonstrations. Eylon, experts of the Middle East say that in the Middle East you have to speak Arabic. That's the language which is understood. In the Arab world, it seems as if we don't speak, but in the Western world, we need to speak in a progressive language. Otherwise, we won't be able to reach the young population. So I want to hear your opinion whether we understand that we don't speak the language that the world is now willing to listen to with the Arab world and the Western world.
First of all, within their, if I were to come up onto MSNBC, I'd try to use a different language than I would use on Fox News and with the evangelicals in general, because ultimately you have to craft a message for each public. Of course, there are things that are said by the political level which are directed toward Arab ears, and that's not the way we would talk to the West, because they have to hear a different message. The situation abroad regarding anti-Semitism is more severe than what Israel understands. I've heard horrific stories about a mother taking her children from school in New York, and she sees that people drew swastikas on their bags. All of the, we're not going to reach all those publics, but there's a large part of the liberal elite public that we can reach, because the anti-Semites are trying to pull them in one direction. They're not there, but they're afraid to confront them. And our role is to explain to them why Israel is a much more loyal demonstration of their open liberal values than those who are trying to destroy parts of the society and take them towards anti-Semitism. So it's not a lost cause. We can definitely reach them. And this is basically one of our major missions, of making that distinction between, or within the progressive world, between those who say, well, Israel is responsible for all of the ills of the world, versus those who are more skeptical, but they're still prepared to listen. And then we have the problem of the unbalanced battlefield, because there are so many people on the other side. If I'm facing off now against the special emissary of the UN on humanitarian and refugee issues, so how could the government spokesperson help here? That's a major challenge, because we're short on time. With your permission, I'd like to ask Pnina and Ruth to say one more thing. Pnina, can you tell us what are the tools that we have available? So this ties into what was already said. We have to fight over the same public, the same audience that hasn't decided yet. Those who are against us, we have to fight against them as much as possible. Those who support us, we have to help those people so that they aren't afraid to support us. And the ones in the middle need to be convinced. They talked about this government and about the problems that it creates. You can't say this, I can. And here too, this is a disastrous government in this sense, because it is doing everything that feeds into that campaign against us. Look, and you can't call every type of criticism anti-Semitism, even if it's coming from the American administration. If I say something in order trying to support Israel and they call me anti-Semitic, then I'll go to the anti-Semitic camp. We're pushing them into their hands. We have to speak that language. We have to say that we do respect the law, and that we respect rights. We do this, and we try to do this, but we speak with the opposite language. We always understand from senior government officials and soldiers in those movies, we're simply giving ammunition to our enemies. If they would arrest people if they were to do this in Hamas. So let's start with that. We have to wrap up this discussion and really just one more sentence. And unfortunately, we're going to actually have to wrap up this discussion. So another two sentences, please. The first is that even if you take Israel out of the equation, there will still be anti-Semitism. You need to take that into account. And often, regardless of what we do, people will hate us. And it's true that we will not be able to win over those audiences. But I think that, yes, in today's current situation, we have to go on the offensive. We're doing this a bit, and it's happening. One of the major tools to do that is the legal tool. We saw that in campuses in the United States, students have started to file claims against the universities. This is something that deters people in the United States, and it could have a lot of major effect. And along with financial tools, this could be a major leverage to pressure universities into contending with anti-Semitism. And this is a tool that can be used in other settings and to make a difference. And I still have a lot to say about this. So let me end by saying, first of all, that to all three of you, thank you on behalf of the INSS and on behalf of the State of Israel. Every arena that you presented here is tough and complex, and it's a very long discussion and it's complex, and we don't have enough time to exhaust it. And note that it's being moderated by a woman that's staying within schedule. Thank you.